Welcome to the Future of Payroll and Workforce Management Insights by HR.com, your go-to resource for insights into payroll and workforce management. From navigating compliance and technology trends to exploring the latest in global payroll solutions, we're here to keep you ahead of the curve. Join us as we dive into the forces reshaping payroll and share practical strategies to optimize your workforce management. Let's get started. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Future of Payroll and Workforce Management podcast here at HR.com. I am your host, Brent Skinner, Executive Community Leader here at HR.com. And my guest today is Jake Soliman, who is Vice President and Strategic Solution Advisor at Strata. Welcome, Jake.
Thank you, bud. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. Plenty of pleasure to go around anyway.
Good.
Thank you for joining us today, and I'm really looking forward to today's discussion. Yeah, we're going to talk about global payroll and a few other things, really hot topics. But perhaps you could just share with our audience first. I like to ask all of my guests this question because it's always interesting to hear, what makes you tick, sort of what gets you up in the morning, galvanizes you on a day-to-day basis when it comes to the world of work. So we don't have to boil the ocean, just when it comes to the world of work.
Certainly. No, it's a good question. I appreciate even the opportunity to think a little bit about that. So, goodness, there's probably a lot in there, but just for everyone's benefit. So I've been in this space, this industry now for almost 20 years, which is hard to believe. So good amount of perspective, and I've seen a lot over the time from different technology changes, operating models. And through that time, I've been with different iterations of Strata. So for those that are not familiar with Strata, we're currently a global solution for payroll, HR, administration across the world, as well as some other services we do in professional services realm. But that has a long tenure and history where I've been a part of, thankfully, across Alight, Aon Hewitt, and Hewitt, for those that are familiar with those names that go back in North America. So I think about that tenure and I look forward, honestly, what really kind of keeps me going, gets me excited is, sounds a bit cliche, but being able to come to our customers and help them solve the problems they're going for. I know many people say that, but I'm really fortunate to be in a role with Strata where when we think about global payroll, regional payroll, even expand that a little bit broader into HR, a lot of companies are facing similar challenges, but also different in their own industry, in their own business models, in their own geographies, et cetera. So being in that unique position to be able to think about how we can look at it holistically, take those lessons learned, take those best practices, and then bring those on a daily basis to help customers be successful in their own right, and then bring that one layer further to the employees that they serve on their side, truly really is what kind of keeps me motivated and going to keep learning, keep challenging, and keep progressing forward.
Yeah, and it is such a great feeling to know that the product and the services that you're providing, product you're producing, is really doing that. Because there's so many real, frustrations in the world of work. So it's always great to hear from somebody in the trenches on that
Yes.
side of things. Yeah,
Never
trying to make
short
it happen.
frustrations. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many frustrations in the world of work. We're getting better at it.
Every day. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start off with AI because we weren't going to get through a podcast in the world of work without talking about AI. And two, maybe this one will take us the entire time of the podcast. Who knows? But
It could.
Yeah, it could. What do you see as a practical application of AI in payroll today? I mean, I think we were talking in the green room and we kind of were like, let's stop pontificating. Let's get down to what's doable and makes sense. Like there are some sound uses, right? And there are some limitations. We have a propensity to hallucinate we've seen with AI and these sorts of things, but there's some practical application. Like what's going on here?
I really like the way you said that, the practical application, because to your point, right, every podcast, every conference, probably every seminar for the last 2 years has been focused on AI, all with different intents and great things, right? I think as we've all experienced in our day-to-day lives, the opportunity to infuse this technology into what we're doing from how we manage our day-to-day calendars all the way through our work applications is really changing and providing new opportunities. So when we think about this from a payroll perspective, it can be a bit daunting, and I understand that, right? When you think about payroll, it's a domain or it's a business that is driven by accuracy, and the criticality of that accuracy impacts hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who are receiving those paychecks and count on that on a daily, weekly, semi-monthly basis, whatever the case may be. So myself, as well as those at Strata, right, we look at this very practically, to your words, to be able to think where and how is the right opportunity to use that. And I would say for those payroll directors, payroll managers that are out there, I'm sure you're getting pressure either from your internal corporate IT teams, your enterprise groups of, hey, we want to implement this, we have a bigger strategy, either come along board with what we're doing or figure it out on your own how to go there. And I think both paths are possible, but create different challenges. So when I think about AI, particularly in the payroll space, there's kind of three main areas that I think really we can leverage this quickly. And at Strata, we're already bringing this to our customers as well. The first one is probably the most obvious when I think about back office operations, right? So payroll has been helped by automation, RPA, cloud systems along the way, but there's still a pretty good amount of manual processing in there. Even more so when you do things or you think about something like quality audits or data integrity checks. Many times you're running a report, someone is pulling that report then, looking through the errors or issues that may come out, having to triage them, and then go back into the system to be able to resolve. But best case, if you're running a tight payroll cycle, you could maybe do a 10, 15% sample of your payroll, not end to end. So one of the really cool ways we're seeing AI applied is looking at that at now a full payroll reconciliation. So the opportunity to use that AI to build in those same kind of defensive audits, those defensive queries you're thinking about, but now do that across your entire pay cycle that's coming through. So 100% quality control. Sorry, question there?
No, I'm just saying, oh
Oh
wow,
yeah,
yeah.
100% quality control on the run that's going through. Even more so, not just to pull out the edits, but then when you apply the machine learning that can go behind it, what you're able to do now is pay cycle after pay cycle, hone that in. So where the first time you might get some of those false positives, you have the opportunity to train the AI so that it can start to normalize to a particular business unit, if there's specific union arrangements that might be in array, or if it's going to be for your geography, you can leverage that AI to now drive that through. So your overall accuracy can become that much more efficient. Your time to deliver shrinks specifically. And then you're able to be more targeted with your resolution so that your payroll team is now focused on what you know are those defects that you didn't have time to before, or maybe fell below a threshold, right? You probably set some threshold in your payroll today where below a certain dollar amount or a certain percentage, we don't have capacity, we don't have time, we're gonna let those go through. Well, now you can focus on those because you're targeted in. So one, I think very practical, very real out of the gate is kind of payroll reconciliation, being able to drive that through. Even
That's
more,
really,
oh,
go
please.
ahead. Well,
No,
that's
I'm
really
excited about this.
interesting.
So you have to stop me, but I say even more
I
so
know
when I think about,
we're talking over each other a little bit here, happens because this is an exciting topic, right?
it
But
is.
yeah, what do you how does that help with the employee experience?
Ah, I love that. So yes, one from an employee, just piggybacking off of the reconciliation, they're going to get an accurate paycheck. They don't have to worry about overpayments as much. Don't have to worry about underpayments. You can drive them to a consistent, accurate component, which, to be fair, they just expect that. That's not going to wow anybody. They're going to expect that they get paid what they should be paid every cycle. But the one that we're exploring, I think, has a lot of practicality to it as well, is using the more generative side of AI to support the employee in their experience. And I'm really seeing kind of two main areas that's coming out. The first one is call the chatbot, call it a interactive experience, but it's kind of the same component. Help them understand the paycheck, right? If your AI can ingest that output, it can now help the employee understand what particular earnings and deduction codes may mean, why there's a delta on this paycheck from the prior. Can you look forward and now start to anticipate, well, what might my paycheck in the next cycle or a quarter from now look like if I maintain the same type of hours or the same type of earnings I've had along the way? So things that maybe they thought couldn't ask, or they had to call a service center, or they reached out to the payroll team, but there can be pretty basic without getting too far into compliance. Just help me understand what it is I'm looking at, whether it's going to be a tax election, a retirement contribution, something that can help them kind of navigate specifically to what they're doing. The second big one on the employee side that I think they'll be able to really leverage is a bit of what I would just call optimization opportunity. So if you're an employee and we can now look back over, let's say, 6 months of paychecks, project forward a little bit, you can start to use that AI to make recommendations for changes they might make as a part of something coming through. So you could think about that as, do you need to change your tax deferrals? Do you want to change your elections on how some of that could be? If we've noticed that there's been an increase in your net pay over a couple of months, is there an opportunity to consider increasing your retirement contribution or contributing more to the HSA, which might be below limits? So all configurable, right? Some might assume that's a little too invasive. You could pull that back. Some might appreciate that. But again, opens up an opportunity in an employee by employee specific way to look back to analyze the data as well as project forward, and then help them make more informed decisions about how and where they can best optimize their paycheck go forward. So really cool things I think that are right around the corner we can all do.
And we hit on financial wellness, right? We
Oh,
also hit on
absolutely. Yeah.
employee engagement, right? And also the sort of the visceral employee experience impact of payroll, right? So
Mhm.
I had a presentation at HR West last month around this idea that, payroll so close and yet so far. Was a play on the old Frankie Valli song, right? But I won't sing it right now, but it's payroll is so far away, right? And it's only when it's wrong that the employee calls up and says, "Hey, what's wrong with my
Oh, so true.
paychecks and my check? And oh, by the way, I'm thinking of leaving if there's another problem next time, right?" Which is a big deal. So we're talking about employee retention, but we want payroll has a visceral impact on the employee experience, but we want it to be not, we don't want just to eliminate the potentially negative impact on the employee experience. We want to
Exactly right.
elevate the positive impact on the employee experience of payroll. And that's with that large language model stuff that you just described,
Mhm.
that's elevating it. Absolutely. Yeah. So I just want to point that out. You brought up some really great
Yeah.
points, Jake.
And I really like the way you said that. Having been in the space for so long, I would say payroll has been a bit of a back office function, and meeting your service levels, getting accurate paychecks out the door, keeping the noise down was considered a great job. And that's good. That's commendable. We all know how much work goes into that. But I'll go right with what you were saying. The opportunity now to take the payroll team, the payroll domain within a company, and elevate that into something that's enhancing the user experience, bringing something to that employee that's going to drive their engagement, want them to interact with the company, is really a new horizon that I think we all have the opportunity to take advantage of. So being able to take your resources that we're doing, as we mentioned, some of those back office processes, but now focus them on how do you think strategically? How do you work into the bigger picture of what your organization is trying to achieve? This AI technology is really enabling that quick switch, if you will. I would say in the next 6, 12, 24 months, we're going to see some real transformations here.
Yeah, so exciting to know we're right on the precipice of some big change in in a positive direction in that regard. So let's shift gears here. We're
Okay.
gonna shift away from AI. We managed to get the AI discussion in 10 minutes. It was amazing, amazing.
Record.
Let's talk about failed or stalled transformations when it comes to
Hmm.
global payroll and to a lesser extent maybe WFM. How do we explain them? Uh, you and I were talking before again, and
Yeah.
many of these apparently, are lift and shift, right? And we know, for example, that some users decide to make a move elsewhere before eventually coming back around again because maybe they didn't hit their projected business outcomes, this sort of thing.
Mhm.
There are other reasons. What's going on here?
Another really good question. Thinking back through, I'd say the last 5 years, even before that, there's always been trends of transformation. For those that have been in the industry, right, there was a big move to the your mess for less type outsourcing arrangement. Then there was the push for global shared services. The last 5, 7 years has been the transformation on cloud technology. So there's always been drives moving this forward. And I would say each have their successes and each have their challenges. When I think about that possible failed or stalled transformation, when I narrow that down to those that have recently moved to cloud applications, I think we are seeing an unfortunate large number of those that didn't meet the expected outcomes. And that's really what I mean when I think of a stall or failed transformation. The business case wasn't achieved, the user adoption or the end user engagement that was expected wasn't achieved. And quite frankly, if there were promises made from the payroll, the HR team to the senior leadership team that funded it that we weren't able to carry forward on, I would put all those kind of into a failed or still not achieved transformation. And that can be challenging, right? Because your team may have just spent 12, 18, 24 months implementing a massive project to be able to bring this forward. And then to not see the results come to fruition can be both engaging for the team, but also raise a lot of questions on how and where are we going to be able to bring this forward, because we still have those business case expectations that were set. So with that definition, I would say we're really seeing kind of three main trends across the market that brought this in. And you nailed on one of them, just talking up front there, lift and shift, right? There's a big expectation that was put into the market that moving to cloud technology was in and of itself going to transform the function, such as payroll. And in many cases, it brings a lot of benefit. But when it's myopically focused on implementation of the technology and forgetting about the delivery model, the policies, the data harmonization, the user experience, it doesn't nearly move the needle as far as many organizations maybe thought or expected. And that could be a lack of realization up front. That could be we had to move really fast, so we couldn't take the time early on to harmonize, and we'll come back and do it later is a common theme. Or it could be really kind of bought into that premise that I said sometimes you were sold a dream, that the technology was the transformation and you just had a stark reality come out at the end of it. So that's, I think, one of the big ones is that lift and shift versus transform, where we took what was old, we put it in the system, and we didn't maybe have the broad enough mindset to think about all those components again that really bring everything together. Delivery model plus technology plus the inputs and the outputs all bring that in.
Yeah.
The second one I would say is related to really lack of definition of what those outcomes were. So surprisingly, when we think about companies that were making this move, there can be, and rightly so, why they're making the move, but lack of benchmark information and data beforehand. How are we performing against our cost per paycheck? What is the employee engagement scores? What number of overpayments are we having? How are we running against our errors and omissions? So in many cases, we've seen organizations come through this transformation journey, get a year to 2 years live, and then be unable to quantify against where they came from to where they are. So maybe they were actually succeeding and increasing forward. And sometimes that's not the case, but not taking that time up front to be able to benchmark and say, where are we to where do we want to go, can also drive some of that gap of appreciation or really success metrics to be able to understand that.
Go ahead.
Please.
Go ahead. You had a third one, right? That's right.
I would say the third one I would put out there is really the policy side of things. So a little bit back to lift and shift, but the opportunity through a technology change to use that as the catalyst to be able to say whether it's going to be across regions, across business units, across areas, but we're going to use this to simplify and standardize is paramount, I would say, in transformation. There's always going to be deviations, right? Every company has some unique requirements. Every region or country might have some specific regulations we have to follow. But being able to standardize that as much as possible allows for quick action once you are live, whether it's going to be trying to implement AI, which heavily relies on data, whether it's going to be bringing the same user experience, regardless of where your employee sits on the globe. But that lack of policy transformation and sometimes even executive leadership buy-in to drive that across different areas of the organization, I think is probably that third big contributing factor we've seen helping to really unfortunately stall out some of those large scale transformations that were undertaken.
Yeah, just a few thoughts in response. Just a
Please.
wealth of information there, Jake. One is, going back to the lift and shift, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it before. I heard it put this way: you could give a customer or an employer the best HCM or let's call it payroll solution on the
Right.
planet. Say, here you go, here it is. Go ahead and implement it, and see ya, bye bye. Right? And
Hmm.
if you just focused I think the word was myopically, just
Yes,
on the technology there, you're going to run into trouble because you need to, um, when you move to the cloud, there's considerations such as, customizations versus configurations. You have a little bit less, leeway and these sorts of things. You really need to think through your workflow. And and that was one of the, I think,
precisely.
one of the things you brought up there. And so it's really important to plan this and not just think, okay, I'm just going to have this shiny new cloud software. It's going to be great. We talked about, Ben, you talked about business outcomes and having those well-defined outcomes. So you can actually go back to leadership, because let's face it, payroll, it's like improving the payroll process, whether it be through new technology or transformation or whatever. That could be, for whatever reason, it's a hard sell because again, it's in the back
Sure.
office. Hey, it's this is I just get it done, man. You know what I mean?
It's working
and
today.
and so
Why? Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So once, if you are fortunate enough to persuade and convince your leadership that, hey, we need to make a change in our payroll, and then you don't define those business outcomes, you go back to them in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, and you can't prove that it was better, even though it's better because you're in it every single day. Then that's a terrible situation to be in. Um,
So true.
yeah, yeah. I know I think we should have you back for another episode, Jake,
I would love
because
that. This is great.
because we didn't even get to advisory and
We
global payroll transformation. So, let that be for the audience. Let that be sort of the teaser for the next episode that Jake and I will do, and we're going to talk about that. And maybe we'll revisit some of these other topics as well. Thank
I
you.
think it's a good idea because to your point, I think that is the next natural evolution. Is we've talked about some of the challenges. Where are we seeing those opportunities to resolve those and try to move this forward? So, would love to come back and have that conversation and pick your brain a little bit there as well. Be good.
Yeah, absolutely. So you heard it here first, HR.com audience. Jake will be back. In the meantime, Jake, thank you so much for joining us today for this episode.
Thank you for having me. Had a good time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Workforce Management and Payroll Insights by HR.com. We hope today's episode brought you valuable insights and fresh perspectives on the future of payroll and workforce management. Be sure to check out more episodes and explore resources at hr.com/podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep innovating and making a difference in the world of payroll and workforce management.